Hello everyone. First off, I want to commend all your hard work and encourage you to continue to make progress towards completing your assignments. I'm going to use this video to discuss Unit 4 content, Project 4A, and how this is going to help you in completing the case study Part 2 with the Smiths. For Unit 4, we'll be working primarily with your financial counseling text. Unit 4 is about the communication process and techniques to utilize the process effectively. Your main takeaways from this section of the course should be explaining what financial counseling is, the processes of financial counseling, and lastly, how we can use the various methods of communication in financial counseling. I think we should really center around what financial counseling is for a moment. From the first assignment, Project 1A, I still sense some confusion on the role of a financial counselor versus a financial planner. The following is a table to compare characteristics between a financial counselor or coach and a financial planner or advisor. One of the main points I would like to make is that a financial counselor is trying to make the client self-reliant. You know, the old teach a man to fish saying? We want to coach our clients to manage their finances on their own and extinguish their need for financial counseling. When we look at these in comparison, it really helps us to identify the differences and to reframe our current situations from thinking and initiating dialogue or typing your assignments as a planner and shift to a counselor role. The next component is understanding the different forms of financial counseling. I'm going to list all three identified forms of financial counseling and provide some identifying qualities to each. Reference the financial counseling text for more examples on pages 7 through 10. Remedial counseling is most often seen when a client has experienced a state of discomfort, whether personal, financial, or emotional, or the problem has already surfaced. With remedial counseling, we help the client identify their current financial position and help in the steps resolving their situation. This form of counseling is contingent on whether the client can accept responsibility for their actions to take steps needed to changing their situation. For example, if a client were to indicate that they have good income but continue to have past due bills surface, we may need to analyze their spending to restore them to a better financial state. Productive counseling is most often utilized when the client is financially stable but would like to better understand how to use their resources in a more beneficial manner. For example, maybe your clients come to you with their credit report and have a good score of 720, but want to know how to utilize this. We may use the productive form of counseling to aid them. Preventative is the last form of counseling we will discuss. Think of this form as taking productive counseling and mixing it with remedial counseling. The text best describes this on page 9 by stating, preventative counseling is used when a client perceives a need for productive use of resources to prevent the need of remediation. For example, if a previous client who was identified as a pleasure money personality were to come to you and want to discuss budgeting after a promotion at work that included a pay increase, the client is seeking productive use of the new income to keep herself from needing remediation from falling into her overspending habits again. The extent of the course to this point has been dealing with the gathering of information based on money personalities, financial statements, and debt instruments. Now we want to explore the role of processing this information through communication and listening. We have probably all heard someone state along the way that you are constantly communicating, whether you're saying anything aloud or not. For example, when I see people in the library with headphones in their ears, they are communicating to me that they do not want to be disturbed. Everything we do is communicating something to others, whether we find it to be an intentional communicated cue or not. We can define these more heavily with the principles outlined in Chapter 2 that detail the interlacing of communication and information. Be sure you understand the types, components, and channels of communication, as well as how these differ amongst different genders and cultures that are discussed in Chapter 3. Chapter 4 discusses the listening process, which is something that a large majority often discount or forget about in communicating with others. There are an abundance of communicated cues that affect the relationship between a client and counselor based on how we listen to one another. I'm going to review the rules of listening, and I would urge you to think about the types and techniques of listening that correspond to these as you read through the text and complete your assignments for the unit. Responding to the main idea doesn't necessarily mean only what they stated the meeting was about. For example, if a couple comes in and states that credit cards are their main point of the meeting, but as they speak to you about it, you continually hear the husband say overspender, and the wife appears to be turning away from the conversation with her body, there may be more to the situation that we need to respond to as a counselor, such as maybe budgeting. This ties into the next rule of listening. Respond to the emotional messages. However, we want to check the validity of these emotions with what we hear the client say. For example, if a client is stating they are ready to change their spending habits, but continues to roll their eyes at suggestions or hold a resenting tone that communicates lack of acceptance to the change, we need to respond to the accurate message they are sending. Next, remember significant details while listening to a client discuss their problems. Think about when you have a friend remember a detail to a story you told them a week ago that really hit home to you. That makes you feel more confident in the relationship you have with them and reassures that when you communicate to them, they listen. This also instills confidence in the client-counselor relationship. Lastly, make justifiable inferences when listening to a client. This often comes in restating the information given to ensure that you are hearing the correct cues or that the client is adequately delivering their message. The last two chapters in your reading assignment discuss usage and strategies in counseling in relation to communication. It is such a vital component to the process. When you're reading through the assignment, think about how these processes and what techniques and/or strategies are relevant to the case study with the Smiths. This is a great way to better understand and formulate questions about the assignment. Project 4A is going to give you 2 scripts of client-counselor meetings with a brief overview and some nonverbal information of the client's mannerisms. Using the readings from financial counseling, answer the questions in the Project 4A assignment prompt relating to these 2 situations. Think about the processes of listening and communication and what strategies and techniques the counselor should be using to help facilitate the meeting and help the client. For Project 4A, you may answer the questions directly in the table provided in the Word document. Retitle the document to include your last name and then upload to Blackboard. I can't stress enough that you are sure to hit submit after you upload the assignment. In-progress assignments cannot be graded. As always, if you have any questions with the assignment, please post in the discussion board or send me an email. I asked for you all to provide me with questions after reading the prompt for Case Study Part 2, but I never received any direct questions, so I'm going to provide an overview of the information and include some key points that should be carried over from the first part of the case study. Case Study Part 2 is going to ask you to apply the information from Unit 3 and Unit 4 to the scenario with the Smiths. So far, we have gathered their information and analyzed it to assess their financial health. Now, we need to communicate to them and our boss the findings of these assessments, as well as provide recommendations of what could help their current situation. Concepts from Unit 3 to consider are the different types of debt instruments discussed in the readings, and how we should prioritize the ones currently utilized by the Smiths, as well as what are the best recommendations for the Smiths regarding current and potentially future debt instruments, such as the mortgage on their new home. Unit 4 is going to come into play with explaining the difference between financial counseling and financial planning to the Smiths in Section 2. Also, Section 3 is going to encompass a lot of the topics we just discussed in this lecture video, as well as in the reading assignments, such as what counseling method is best to use with the Smiths, what listening and communication techniques do you feel are best for working with the Smiths. Be sure to really explain these and reference the reading where needed. I want to make note that Section 1 and Section 2 should be written to the Smiths instead of about the Smiths. This is what is meant by stating client-facing document. However, the last section of this assignment is stated that it is written to the managing financial counselor. So, we will be writing this about the Smiths. This is to be all in one Word document, so section headers should be utilized. Be sure to reference the rubric and the assignment checklist located at the end of the assignment prompt document to ensure you are completing all sections of the assignment. If you have any questions along the way, There are discussion boards set up to post questions within, and I'm only an email away. The case study part 2 does not have a late extension, and no exceptions are made, so be sure to upload and submit your properly titled one-word document to Blackboard by October 18th at 1 p.m. In conclusion, it's been a great semester so far, and keep up all your hard work. I can't wait to read the second part of your case study.